So at the time I'm recording this, we are 3 days away from the Kingdom Hearts series coming to Steam. In fact, by the time I put this out, it may already be out. This has been a long time coming. While this isn't the first time the series made the jump to PC, it will be the first time these games can be played without an internet connection on PC, since Epic Games constantly required that. This means any Steam Deck owners, such as myself, will finally be able to play HD Kingdom Hearts games wherever and whenever we go, no internet needed. I'm so happy about that. Not only that, Steam has such a massive user base that it will no doubt bring new people into the series. I've seen so many fans ecstatic for this, but I'm especially excited for this release to help bring in new Kingdom Hearts fans. If you clicked on this video, chances are you may be someone who wants to play these games on Steam. Maybe you've played a game or two in the series before, or maybe you haven't played any at all and gotten confused as to why all these anime characters and Disney characters were in the same trailer. For a brief rundown, Kingdom Hearts is an action RPG series involving characters and concepts between both Disney and Square Enix IPs. The first game released in 2002, blowing the world away with flashy combat and stunning PS2 visuals. But in addition to these properties, the series focuses a lot on some original characters. And with each new release, we get an often highly emotional story surrounding these characters. With over 20 years under this series' belt, there's been so many games and so many stories that have added to this huge, interconnected web of a franchise. But trust me when I say that this does work. You don't think it would. This is Disney and all of this other, JRPG anime stuff thrown into a huge pot together, and yet somehow, not only does it taste good, it's created a certain magic, one that has gripped the hearts of myself and countless others. And through this video, I hope you can experience that same magic as well. So, for any newcomers first joining the series on Steam, I'd like to give you all a brief rundown on how to best experience the Kingdom Hearts franchise, so you can feel that same magic for yourself. Now, if you're just looking for the order to play the games and aren't looking too hard at the specifics, go ahead and skip to this timestamp. Otherwise, I'd like to talk to you about some misconceptions you may have about this series. For a long time, people have said Kingdom Hearts is complicated, that it makes no sense, and that you need a graduate degree to understand it all. But don't worry, I'm here to tell you that this series is not difficult to understand. For the most part, it's easy to follow as long as you know when to tackle each game in the series. Now, it's possible you may also be thinking, aren't there only 3 main games? I mean, then isn't the 4th one the one that's coming out soon? Oh, you sweet summer child. You see, while Kingdom Hearts 3 is the 3rd numbered game in the series, in that it's the 3rd one with Roman numerals, it's actually the 10th or 11th installment, depending on who you ask. Every Kingdom Hearts game contains crucial story elements that carry over into subsequent entries. Not just the numbered titles, but also the ones with all the weird-looking subtitles. They are not spin-offs, but are in fact mainline entries. The lack of a Roman numeral does not change this fact. That said, most of them do have somewhat different gameplay styles from 1, 2, and 3. And admittedly, some of these gameplay styles might not be up your alley, and that's okay. They're not meant for everyone. So while I do recommend experiencing the story of each game, you don't always have to experience the gameplay. It's valid to do so by watching cutscene compilations online. I mean, that's how I got into the series. I didn't have any of the consoles needed to play most of the games at the time, so I pulled up walkthroughs for each one, and watching them made me love and appreciate the series years before I finally got to play it. So I respect watching a game instead of playing it. That said, some of these titles are absolutely worth giving a shot in my opinion. In general, if you intend to buy these collections, I try at least the first world in each of these games. If you like what you play, keep going, and I promise it'll be worth it. But no shame if it doesn't work. I'd say the only games I'd hard recommend you'd play are the numbered titles, 1, 2, and 3, since the combat from these games is the type that most people associate with the series. Now this last point might be obvious, but even though I'm asking you to experience every mainline Kingdom Hearts game, you do not have to have seen every Disney movie or played every Square game to understand this series. The majority of the Disney and Square characters do not factor into the main plot. Now, if you have watched some of these movies or played some of these games, you will get a kick out of how they're represented here, but they are by no means necessary. So with all that out of the way, I will be using the rest of this video to show the best order to experience the Kingdom Hearts story. Now, if you've watched the trailer that came out for Kingdom Hearts recently, you'll have noticed they ordered the titles in a very specific order, and this order is in fact the chronological order for the games. Now, some websites do list chronological order as a viable way to experience the series. I'm telling you right now, do not listen to them, do not play in chronological order. Each game assumes you know what happened in past games, and usually will not take the time to explain already established concepts, even if the newer games take place before the older games. This especially goes for the first title in that trailer, Key Back Cover, which is not even a game, but a movie, one that canonically takes place thousands of years before the first game, and has characters that don't even show up until Kingdom Hearts 3. Watching that first and not knowing anything about Kingdom Hearts beforehand would be like if you were watching the MCU for the first time and watched Captain Marvel before Iron Man. Like, sure, you can do that, but most of those new characters introduced in the prequel won't show up until way later down the line, and by the time they do, you'll probably forget about them. And even then, most of the games that are technically prequels have cutscenes that flash forward past later games in the timeline, which just makes things even more confusing to keep track of for the first time going, if you're playing the prequel entry before the originals. For the most part, I'd say the best order to experience these games is in release order. In my opinion, this order allows you to more easily remember big concepts of the series when they come back around again. This way, you'll be able to know exactly what's meant as a reference to past games and as a foreshadowing moment for future games. With all that said, let's finally get into how I'd order these games. First off, we're going to start with the 1.5 plus 2.5 remix. This is a collection of the first 6 Kingdom Hearts games that released. So in order for release, you would go Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, then Chain of Memories, then 2 Final Mix, then 358 Days Over 2, then Birth by Sleep Final Mix, then Recoded. Just some quick naming conventions for you. The Final Mix part on some of these games denotes that they are re-releases with extra content, and the RE: signifies that these games are remakes. And this game is called 358 Days Over 2 because the game takes place over 358 days, and it focuses on 2 characters who share the same powers. If it doesn't make a lot of sense right now, don't worry, most of us fans didn't really get it either. All you need to know is that these are the definitive versions of each of these games. Except for Days and Recoded, those are just movies made up of cutscenes from the original games. You won't miss out on much if you're just watching these the first time through, though if you do want a little more context, it may be worth snooping around for DS versions of the games after you watch these. But again, it's not required. Now you may notice that this order is different from the ordering on the collection's main menu. You see, back in 2013, Days was bundled in with the first game in Chain of Memories, while a year later, 2 would be bundled in with Birth by Sleep and Recoded, which would technically be out of order for the release dates. But because of these initial releases, many fans initially watched the Days movie before playing Kingdom Hearts 2. In fact, many articles that came out around this time said that the recommended order would be watching Days for KH2, whereas a good portion of the fandom will say that it's better to play Kingdom Hearts 2 before Days, since that's how they came out in release order. So, here's my personal take about this. While experiencing Days before Kingdom Hearts 2 can clear up some points that might be confusing, especially in the opening for Kingdom Hearts 2, ultimately it ruins a lot of mystery in that game. The opening movie for Days is literally all scenes from Kingdom Hearts 2, so it felt like they expected you to know where those scenes came from. And not only that, several characters that first appear from Kingdom Hearts 2 don't reveal their face until later on. To me at least, it's a little jarring if I were to start with Days and see everyone's faces uncovered, then suddenly they were covered at the beginning of 2, only to then be uncovered by the end of that game. For those reasons, while I don't think you'd be wrong for watching Days or playing Days or however you do it before playing Kingdom Hearts 2, I would not recommend it for your first time through the series. A couple other notes about this collection: some of these games are split into multiple separate campaigns. For instance, finishing Chain of Memories unlocks a new campaign called Reverse Rebirth, Make sure you play or watch that one as well, as that is a separate storyline from the main game. And if you're playing Birth by Sleep, this game is made up of 3 different characters' campaigns. Make sure you have separate save files for each of those characters, as you'll need all 3 of them in order to unlock the big final ending for the game. You'll also need to get all the Xehanort reports. These are lore documents that are scattered throughout the game, with different ones being placed in different characters' campaigns. So make sure you hunt all of them down, or else the final episode for this game will not unlock. Once you've finished all the games in 1.5 plus 2.5, you'll be ready to move on to the contents in 2.8. Here, we can just go left to right, so Dream Drop Distance, then Key Back Cover, then 0.2 Birth by Sleep, A Fragmentary Passage. After that, you're ready to move on to Kingdom Hearts 3. And after you reach the ending, go through Remind and all the subsequent Limit Cut and Secret episodes, each of which unlock after you beat the previous one. And, just like that, that's all the Kingdom Hearts games, or at least all the ones that are on Steam. There are some other games that are found on other platforms, and each of them do add more lore and important story elements to the series, but none of these are required to understand the games on Steam. These games make up the first big arc of the series, what is known as the Dark Seeker Saga, while the remaining games are meant to build on the games from that saga and connect to the start of the Lost Master arc, which will begin with Kingdom Hearts 4. So after playing all the games on Steam, if you want to look forward to Kingdom Hearts 4, I'd recommend going over these next few entries as well. So once you're done with Remind, I'd first start with Melody of Memory. This is a rhythm game in a similar style to Theatrhythm from Final Fantasy that goes over music from the Kingdom Hearts series. Oddly enough, this game is on all game platforms except for Steam. I wouldn't be surprised if it makes a jump soon, but regardless, just make sure you play this game only after you've experienced Remind. I will say, there are only like 30 minutes of story content in this, so there is absolutely no shame in just looking up this one online. Now after Melody of Memory, we'll be going back to what is basically the earliest point in the series, which is known as the Key Saga. And in case you're wondering, the X is pronounced Key in reference to the Greek symbol Chi, which is sometimes pronounced Key. The first title in this saga first released back in 2013 with Kingdom Hearts Key, a Japan-exclusive web browser game that is, unfortunately, no longer playable. Luckily, the story of this game was adapted into a mobile game known as Unchained Key, which launched just a year or so before Key Back Cover was released in 2.8. After a while, Unchained Key ended up getting new story events added to it that were separate from the original browser game, and we ended up getting so much story that the game ended up rebranding itself to Union Cross to denote that this is more of a separate entity. And in case you're wondering, the X now stands for Cross because in the game you can join one of a couple different unions, and there's a new mode introduced when the app rebranded, when, oh my god, it's like they're the different unions and they're crossing, and the game's shut down, guys. You don't need to worry about this. Just know that most of the time whenever anybody talks about these games, they're usually just talking about the same series of events. Unchained Key and Union Cross are the same game that's currently shut down, but are also a half-sequel, half-remake to Key. So, with all that out of the way, I would recommend watching Union Cross after Melody of Memory, since Melody of Memory was the last full game that released before Union Cross received its final story update. There is an argument to be made about going through Union Cross before Key Back Cover, but in my opinion, everything you need to know about the Key Saga before Kingdom Hearts 3 is already covered in Key Back Cover. If anything, Union Cross relates more to future titles than to anything you're going to play on Steam. So, while the events of Union Cross are referenced in games like Kingdom Hearts 3, they're not particularly important to the main plot lines in the Dark Seeker Saga. Now, before shutting down, the app rebranded one last time to Union Cross Dark Road, which housed both Union Cross and a new separate game, Dark Road, which has an entirely separate story that builds off the events in Union Cross. However, since the online servers for Union Cross went down years ago, it is only in a very poorly organized theater mode. Ugh. Honestly, you're better off just watching cutscene compilations online. There's a bunch of good ones out there. Then after that, you can do the same with Dark Road, While that game is still playable offline, it's very repetitive and honestly the least interesting out of all the games, so again, no shame in just watching it online. So, with all that out of the way, here is my recommended play order for the Kingdom Hearts series from start to finish. Once you've experienced all these titles, you'll be ready for anything that comes next in this series. With Missing Link, a new mobile game taking place between Union Cross and Dark Road, set to come out later this year, and Kingdom Hearts 4, hopefully not too far behind, maybe, possibly. There's never been a better time to get into this series. While the story is not always perfect, and things can still get complicated at times, the characters in Kingdom Hearts are just so near and dear to my heart. The way each of their hearts are tested creates so many beautiful, heart-wrenching, emotional moments I will always cherish. And if you're new to the series, I hope you'll be able to cherish those as well. Kingdom Hearts has gone through so much in the last 20 years. There really is nothing else like it in anywhere else in gaming. I know all the baggage of this series may seem a bit too much to newcomers, but I promise, if you choose to dive in, you won't regret it. A whole slew of wonders is about to be open to you, because once you start, regardless of warnings, the future won't scare you at all.